everyone, welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Tonight's special guest is Belladonna Laveau. She's a spiritual advisor. She is Archpriestess. She is an author of books like Accelerated Wicca, Between the Worlds, and Channeling Divinity. So we're very excited to have her. No further ado, let's welcome our guest. Our special guest today is Belladonna Laveau. How you doing, Belladonna?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me here. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I am the Archpriestess of the Aquarian Tabernacle Church and the Matriarch of the international collective. We're kind of thinking like, what is that? And we're kind of like the federal government with a bunch of little covens and churches all over. So, but we're not a governing body. We're more of a facilitating body. We offer big church resources for, the little covens and stuff to help them be legal. And we work at protecting civil rights and providing services. Like we run a seminary and we have the fourth largest scouting children's organization in the world and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I'm very popular. Let me silence my technology so that it doesn't continue to upset us. All right, there we go. Because my Bixby will also say, I don't understand what you're talking about. I have been a witch since the 80s. I met my teacher who had come over from England, and he trained me in Gardnerian witchcraft. I have been, I've been a real spiritual person all my life. The first time that I ever remember talking to God, I was 5 and I was raised Mormon. I went to Mormon seminary and I cheated in scripture chase because I was a bad girl. And then I found the goddess through the craft. I wanted to be a healer. And so I started studying healing, and then that led to herbs, and then that led to witchcraft. And here I am, much to my mother's chagrin. But I love it. I have been devoted to the goddess since the 80s, and, just wanted to be in service and real devoted in my practice every day, talking to her and being with her and stuff and asking to be in service. And she just kept providing me opportunities until I got here. And I don't think there's anywhere else to go from here, but we're finding other ways that we can help. Like we're currently working on an accreditation project to be able to accredit local schools. Like your coven has a little school and you don't get a college degree, you just get a Wiccan degree. So if that person that's teaching it accredits it with Wiccan Seminary, then you can use those classes as credits for a degree in Wiccan ministry, which I think is really cool because we don't have anything like that in Wicca, and that's groundbreaking. That's what the ATC does. We provide opportunities for covens to work together. It's not a tradition. People are like, what's the ATC tradition? We don't really have a tradition. It is a collection of covens that are vetted and, real. And it's not all internet play games. Some people are like, I'm 16 and me and my friends have a circle. Make me a legal church. No, you have to have credentials, right? But there's not a specific, you have to be this tradition. So we work with covens all over the world, and we provide those kinds of resources. Like we have the seminary and the children's group, but we also have Pagans in Need, which feeds people in Michigan. We have Terry Riley's doing this amazing food bank in we call it Lady of the Lake City, Arkansas. He's doing big work down there. And so we really provide opportunities for people to maximize their ministry by connecting with a larger organization that might have the tools that they need without having to pay thousands of dollars to get them yourself. Recreating the wheel in every local coven is very difficult. Working together, we can accomplish more.
So that's true. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about that? Because that's something that I'd like for everybody to know. As far as forming a coven, how do you become part of that network? Is there, something in particular that the coven has to have or be? How does that work?
Okay, so this is a really interesting conversation. So we're going to go into some good stuff right here. Okay, controversy.
I know, right?
Okay, so there's some words that we throw around in non-Wicca community that really apply to Wicca, but we don't use them because of our culture. So we have a very tolerant culture. We believe that the goddess is going to take you down the path that she's going to take you down, and that's sacred. Nobody can take that away from you. At the same time, Wicca is a closed practice. We don't talk about Wicca being a closed practice because there's all these books, and you can, we're not like, hey, you can't burn patchouli because that's witchcraft. We don't say that. We don't care. The goddess put patchouli here. If you want to use patchouli, use patchouli. But Wicca is a closed practice in the sense of you're supposed to be initiated in order to be clergy, not in order to just be a witch, but in order to be clergy and run a group. Okay, that's where it comes in, where what happens is witches are kind of introverts, We're the people at the edge of town doing the weird stuff at night. And so we don't really invite everybody into our circles. We're kind of insular like that, right? So what happens with a lot of witches is they start studying on their own because they're introverted and they don't know any other pagans. And then after 10 years of doing that, they find some people who vibe to them and they're like, oh my God, do you want to do a circle with me? And then the next thing you know, you've got this person who has more knowledge than anybody else, but not really any formal training, running a group. Now, what do? People want to be initiated because that's what they hear other groups do, right? And so then somebody's like, oh, well, now, how do I deal with that? I'll just tell everybody I was initiated way back when and stuff like that. And that messes everything up because then we have all this weird non-legitimate stuff mixed in with people who worked really hard and made it up through the ranks. So it's kind of controversial because you've got this closed practice for clergy and all this information that you can get at your fingertips. So it seems like you have the closed information for clergy, and then Wiccans are all accepting. So it's a stew of weirdness, right? So we have to weed through did you get a real initiation? Are you legitimate in your tradition? Let's have some references, because if you were to break the law and say accidentally embezzle or have a sexual issue with the law, because we're a fertility religion, a lot of times we get in trouble there because we think everybody wants to get freaky, and that's just your perspective, not everybody's perspective. And then all of a sudden somebody cries foul and there's trouble, right? Like things like that happen. So we have to make sure that you're legitimately a clergy member and that you were promoted as a clergy member, and you're not just somebody that, oh my goodness, this Wicca sounds like fun, I think I can get laid, or I read more books than everybody else in my circle, so I'm the priestess and now I'm initiating people. That's the kind of where we have to, sift through. And that's a unique thing, I think, to Wicca because of our culture is so tolerant and loving and accepting, and we want to play with everybody. We're like, hey, y'all, let's all go worship the goddess together, and then you have formal clergy training, which is kind of funny because I remember when I was in clergy training, my priest said, go memorize all this stuff. And I was like, memorize? Isn't this like a hippie religion? We got to memorize stuff? And he was like, little girl, in his English accent. I did not understand the magnitude of what I had encountered when I found my teacher. And I'm super, super grateful for his tolerance with my ignorance at the time. Yeah, I did. We didn't have internet back then. You couldn't just find a teacher. He just popped up into my life because that's where the goddess wanted me to be, right? Like I had read this spell to meet a wizard. I hadn't done it. I just was flipping through this book and I was like, oh, a spell to meet a wizard. That's kind of cool. Let's read it out loud, And then the next day I meet this guy.
It's cute.
He was super impatient with me.
Well,
But
you got lucky, you got blessed, because yeah, the internet wasn't working back then, and we had to do everything, the hard way. So, I would like for you to please kind of go into more what Wicca is about. What it is, how did it get started? Because there are so many people out there that claim to be Wiccan that kind of throw that term around. So, can you just kind of explain it? What exactly is Wicca?
Well, it's a nature-based religion. It is about earth stewardship, communing with the earth, finding sacredness in the earth, understanding that everything happens for a reason, and that when the balance of the universe, sometimes things are working for you and sometimes things are pushing against you, and usually when things are pushing against you, it's because you got something to learn. There's a removing the illusion that blinds us to what's really happening on the planet, which is the spiritual side of stuff. We are incarnated deities who don't know it, right? Like we don't realize that we get into the body and we're like, I have to eat and I have to sleep and I have to have clothes and pay bills, and then you lose track of the underlying, the still small voice, the vibrations. And witchcraft is about sitting down and slowing down and staring at things until they speak to you, inanimate objects, like trees and stuff, and connecting to the unseen things and living in balance with all of it, both the seen and the unseen. There's a lot of times witches, like they forget that whole live in balance thing, and they want to be a force on the planet. And while that's important, it's also important to find the balance and harmony, because everything has its own due time. Everything is on a cycle, and you have to work with the flows of that cycle. And there's, the Lord and the Lady, the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, the circle, which is all of that. It's part of the religion. It's a religion, right? And a lot of times that people practice witchcraft like a cookbook recipe. They're like, ooh, meet a wizard, blah, 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 blah. That's what I did, right? That was witchcraft. That was not Wicca. Wicca is dedicating yourself to a discipline, studying with a teacher, applying yourself to the discipline, or I mean, not necessarily a teacher that you can see, but if you're going to call yourself a Wiccan and then get initiated, it needs to be a visible teacher. If you're just going to be a solitary person, you are, which, is a very valid path. I don't mean just solitary, like it's a valid path. You can learn from unseen deities. I learn from unseen deities. Unseen beings all the time. Like, you can learn from everything. And that's part of Wicca, is learning to be with the flow and be a student of the universe and be honorable and humble, while understanding that you are a deity that is a force on this planet, and you can create change. Doing that in balance keeps you from, cutting your head off with the steel saw that is your power. Learning how to temper it. That's important. Yes. It's a big question. It's like, what is Wicca? I mean, there's a library up there. I don't know that it completely covers the subject, but yeah, basically in a nutshell.
It's all encompassing. So, what about covens? You talk about solitary, people. What's the benefit of being a member of a coven?
Well, it's validation and being able to say, did that really happen? Because, when we have a spiritual thing happen to us, we'll almost want to talk ourselves out of it, right? Did that really happen? Did I make that up? Did I dream that? And that's why it's really important to write it all down, because you will forget about it or talk yourself out of it and go back to your normal, free, powerful spiritual experience way of being if you allow yourself. That's the natural order of things. When you're around other people, it's a shared experience. And so you're validated. Also, you don't really know what kind of witch you are until you're around other kind of witches that you're not or that you are, right? So like if you're hanging out with a bunch of witches and they're talking about, taxidermy and picking up dead things off the road and making fetishes with paws and feathers and stuff, and you're not into that, that's not your kind of witchcraft, right? Because there are witches like that. I know them, and I have initiated my son into the magic of picking up the dead animal off the road and then turning it into magical fetishes, because that's all we do. But then you go around a bunch of astrology witches and you start talking to them and you're like, oh my God, this is my thing. That's one of the reasons why being in a coven is important, because you figure out what kind of witch you are. When you go to a coven and that's not the coven for you, that's just because those aren't the kind of witches that you are. And a lot of times we're like, oh, I've been to a coven. It was bad, bad, bad. The high priestess was mean to me and all the people were this way and blah, blah, blah. But maybe you were rude, like if somebody's mean to you, maybe you were rude and they were just defending a boundary. Maybe that just wasn't the kind of witchcraft for you. Don't give up just because you've tried one or even two. Keep being open to finding your people and realize that, not every kind of magic is for every person. That's why there's all these different kinds of Christianity and all these different kinds of, religious sects, because not everybody likes the same thing. And there's a lot of different kind of magic out there. So that's one of the benefits. But the other benefit is, you can really mess yourself up by doing what you want to do on your path. There is a amount of personal discipline that will develop over time. But when you first start your journey into magic, you will naturally gravitate towards the things that are fun and shiny and glittery, and you will avoid the difficult things. And the difficult things are where you need to be. And I never memorized the charge if my teacher hadn't made me do it. So glad that I memorized the charge. There's things that I know, that I studied, that I've never used in my own personal practice, but when I'm talking to other people, I can relate to what they're talking about because I have a surface knowledge of that subject. I don't have an in-depth knowledge. I didn't go into it. I can't talk deep about Kabbalah, but I know a little bit because my teacher was a Kabbalist and he talked about it enough for me to pick it up. And I think that when you have a teacher, they can say, hey, this is where you're messing up. Like I have a business coach today, because in business, there are things that I don't see myself doing. You have to have somebody outside of yourself go, this is where you're messing yourself up. This is what you're doing that is sabotaging your plans. Not necessarily that you're a bad person or you're doing something wrong, because right and wrong are Christian terms. Witches are a wide variety of people, and we all exist in the state of perfection. And when you're a high priestess, you know that, but when you're new coming into Wicca, you kind of don't, right? And so when you're being corrected, sometimes you take it personal. But I really like somebody telling me where I need to correct my flow, because I want success more than I want to feel good about being wrong. So teachers can tell you how to be successful faster.
How do you find a teacher? Because there's so many people out there that claim to be a Wiccan coven. How do you figure out what's the legitimate coven versus somebody that's just, okay, I'm going to be a high priestess, this is a coven? How do you find the right place?
Yeah. So vet them. Anybody that is going to have the authority to walk around in your mind or have control over your opportunities or impact your emotions. And a coven is going to do all of those things. So you want to vet them and know, the kind of things that they're doing, what they've done, who they are. Look up their name on the internet and see what videos are out there. Research them and figure out, Do I want to be like these people? Do I want to be like this teacher? Because you're going to be like these people if you go and hang out at that coven. And you're going to be impacted emotionally, mentally, and by the opportunities placed in front of you. And if you put years and years and years into something, and then you find out that, you know, they weren't who they said they were, or they didn't have the, you know, credentials, or they weren't actually honest, or, you know, whatever. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why people get into the craft, and it's not always pure intentions. So vet people, and watch. You know, one of the things that I say is speak little, listen much. What people are pointing at and what people are talking about, they're telling you about themselves, right? So if they're talking about all of these people that are doing this kind of stuff, then they're probably doing all that kind of stuff. If they're talking bad about the other coven mates while they're talking to you, they're going to be talking bad about you to the other coven mates. Like, pay attention to who people are, and don't be all excited because you finally met a witch. Allow yourself the grace that you are important to, and that it's not just about finding them. They're glad that you're there. Like, it's a mutual relationship. I learned so much from my students. I put so much time and energy into my students. I have to make sure that I like them. I want to be with them. I want to spend time and energy with them, and they want to spend time and energy with me. It's a relationship. So just like anybody else that you would get in a relationship with, nurture it, put time and energy into it, give, right? But also make sure you know what you're getting back and that you want that, right? Because you might not. And also, you can't go on the gossip that people say on the internet, okay? Because people that are gossiping on the internet are telling you about their own character. People who are out there, like, I have heard people say some horrible things about leaders in our community, and then I met that leader and I'm like, oh, that's odd. I wouldn't think that about you. Now that, and I say it out loud, but you know, and so then I watch that person and I find out that no, they're not like that at all. A lot of times in witchcraft, I think that leaders get treated with a very heavy hand when they make mistakes, right? Like, if you make a mistake as a leader in the pagan community, they talk about it from now on. But when you have told somebody no, they can't come and be a sexual predator at your coven, or they stole something and you said, hey, you stole that, you have to give it back, or no, you can't boss these people around just because you're a first degree and they're brand new here, and things like that, people will attack on the internet forever. So you just have to do your own research. Don't listen to gossip. Don't go off of whatever's out on the internet. Meet people, pray about it, read cards, meet more than one person. Don't just be enamored, okay? And then make your decisions wisely. Watch before you jump in. A lot of times people just jump in the water full force, and that's not wise in paganism, because witches are villains in movies for a reason. You should be careful.
That's funny. So what kind of advice would you give somebody that wants to follow the Wiccan religion? What would you tell them? I know, to go out and find a nice coven, do research on that, but a lot of information is on the internet. So, what advice would you give somebody just looking on the internet for some kind of schooling?
So you can learn a lot on the internet. There is a lot of misinformation on the internet too. I would recommend that if you're going to learn, that you find people to learn with, and you get books and you read books, and that you use the internet as a resource that connects you with people, and less of a resource that connects you with a lot of information, because a lot of that information out there is just not not real, and the person that's writing it doesn't know it's not real because they read it on the internet. You know, just write whatever you want to on the internet, and there's nobody to say this website's bunk, right?
Right.
But misinformation is a problem. I would pay attention to it and read books, because books go through some kind of vetting process. It takes a lot of energy to write a book, especially good books. And also, I would go to if you see a book that you like, I would go to the bibliography and look at what books it's in the bibliography. And then when you start seeing some of the same books in the bibliography, read those books, because there's this thing called churn. And churn is, you've got this really wonderful book, say the Bible, right? And then somebody reads the Bible, and then they tell their story, and then the next person tells their story, and the next person tells their story, and the next person tells their story. And then somebody decides to do a rewrite on the whole thing. And then somebody tells a story about the rewrite, and you don't even have the original anymore, right? So you want to go back to original reference texts. Read the British classics, the Ferrets, and I'm partial to them because they're in my upline. But the Starhawk and the groundbreaking people, right? Go read their books and make sure that you have a good, solid foundation and an education, and that you're not just playing around. Because, I mean, you can certainly just play around with witchcraft, but it will bite you if you aren't careful. Like, you know, it will bite you. This is not something that there's not unseen consequences that you can't, you know, measure coming at you. So you want to make sure that you're strategic and smart about how you approach your magical practice, so all the things coming back at you are positive.
What about your books? I saw that you've written a few yourself. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, if I were going to say, how should you study witchcraft, I would say go to Wiccan Seminary.EDU and go learn from the college. And then you're going to get a really good liberal arts in Wicca, and you'll meet a lot of different teachers and a lot of different witches, and you'll gravitate towards your niche. My books are the 101 series, and then my second, it's the third book, or I don't know. But anyway, I've got a sophomore book. It's coming out. It's supposed to have been out already. And I've got so many things going on. You would think 3 years of pandemic, I could write the final chapter. We had the chapter and we lost it. And you know how hard it is to regenerate that magic, you know, once you've done it once. Like, you write this really great article and then you delete it and you can't redo it. So that's where we're at on that. But the sophomore year is really fun, because that's when you do all this shadow work and you get to level up and you work through the chakras. First year is all about learning the lay of the land, learning how to draw stars in the air, cast and call, the theology, the history, the Wiccan law, all that kind of stuff. And then second year is more about delving into the personal magic, figuring out what kind of witch you are. And then third year, you get into rituals, doing magic for the community and stuff like that. And it's a really fun school. I love it. But the magic of the curriculum will really transform your life. I have people tell me all the time, you know, Bella, I didn't think I was going to get this much out of this. And I'm like, well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that you got a lot out of it, because it would be terrible to put that much energy into something where people didn't get anything out of it, right? But I think that the amount of self-discovery that happens when you go to Wiccan Seminary and you have formal classes and homework and you're graded on it, and you get real-time feedback, and you get to interact with teachers who have different personalities. It's really a powerful way of tailoring your work. But it's not initiatory degrees that you earn in Wiccan Seminary. They're scholastic degrees. And scholastic degrees couple up with your Coven degree, but do not replace it. Like, if you have a scholastic degree in Wicca, Atalanta, you could go and get a job at prison ministries, or at a hospital, or at a college as a chaplain. You know, one of the graduates, he just had an associate's degree He was just awarded the first pagan chaplain fire chaplain. I don't know. He's a fireman that became a chaplain in the firemen's guilds. And somebody's gonna write me and go, you don't know anything about firemen? I love firemen. Did that count? You know, I think they're heroes, but he's the first fire chaplain who's a pagan. And I thought that was pretty exciting. So if you want to be a professional and work out in the world, a scholastic degree is what you need. But if you want to be, it can be both, a priestess where you run a church or a charity, some kind of nonprofit thing, where you have a ministry involved, you probably also, or, you know, want to lean on the religious degree, first, second, third degree, the Lord and Lady degree.
So as far as the initiations in Wicca, does each coven, is it the same process for each coven, or do the covens differ? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
The covens the covens in my own tradition differ. Like Covenant of Wise, the Wise tradition is my tradition because I was Gardnerian, but I do things a little bit differently from Gardnerianism because I'm also an astrologer and I have a lot of metaphysical training. So I put air in the north because that's how it is in the sky. And you know, I don't like to argue with stars. I can argue with people, but the stars, not so much. They don't listen. They don't argue back. They just keep doing what they're doing. It's not satisfying. So the Wise tradition, we don't even have similarities. The same thing. Dusty and I don't practice exactly the same way. I can teach 5 people to draw a star in the air and they'll all end up drawing it differently because it is a very unique experience, witchcraft is. And even if me and Atalanta were put in a room together side by side and we both read the same books and we both talked about it and we got all excited and we ate the same things and we slept in the same room and we never had any exposure to anything else, we would still have different ways of practicing witchcraft because we're different people. And that is one of the beautiful things. It is not all the same. That's why you can't get your first degree here and then get mad at this high priestess and go over here and they go, oh, you're a first degree over there. Well, now you're a first degree here. It's not interchangeable. You have to start all over. And people get really upset about that. They're like, I gotta start all over. Well, yeah, because you left training over there and there's something you missed in your magical development, or you would have stuck with it. You know, like people are like, this thing happened and I left my training and they were this, that, and the other. And so now I want you to take me over here. Well, that means we've got to work on developing whatever it is that ran you off from over there. Because when you were over there previously, you thought they were wonderful and loving and happy and all of this was great. And then something happened to turn them into the devil, so to speak. And we have to figure out what that is, right? So you start all over. It's better to figure it out with the people that got you to that place because they probably know exactly what is wrong and aren't even involved in your anger at all and could sort it out if you bother to call them. You know what I mean? Yes. So no, they're not the same and they're not interchangeable. And once you get on the path, you should just ride it out. One of the greatest things that I ever heard somebody say about witchcraft was the dean of our college. I used to be dean of the college and I stepped down so that I could have somebody that had a master's degree run it and take it into its next incarnation. She's the first paid priestess in the ATC. We're really happy that we can afford to pay her a salary. Awesome. So she could. She said, somebody said, I'm really getting frustrated with my training. And she said, just don't quit. I mean, you can be mad, you can feel any way you want to, but just don't quit. And she said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you know, the people that are standing in the center of the circle? She said, yeah, those were the ones that didn't quit. And the charge says, let nothing stop you or turn you aside. The challenges along the path are designed to strengthen you. They will sometimes take you to a really dark and scary place, but it's only dark and scary for you because it's your lesson and it's not dark and scary for everybody else. And if you'll just allow your support system to support you, being in a coven is one of the most powerful things that you can do, because it will propel you past all of your shadows that are sabotaging you from your success, and it will help you grow, because you can't see your shadows. That's why they're shadows, but everybody else can, right? Right, Atalanta. And so that would be, they're not all the same. You got to stick with it, and you got to commit and ride it out, because the journey of working through your shadow will turn you into a realized deity on the planet, not just a, oh my God, I don't know it, and boom, how did I do that, to all of this works for me, and everything magically revolves around your intent and desire. And so it's worth sticking it out and going through all of that hard stuff. But man, sometimes it don't feel like it when you're in the thick of it, right, Atalanta?
I know. Now, all the traditions that is under Wicca, do they all have the same core belief system, or can they branch out and kind of change it a little bit? Is it all one belief system, and then they just have variations of that? How does that work?
I don't think it's not, well, okay. I think the only thing we all agree on is that the charge of the goddess, and there's a bunch of different variations of that if you start looking it up, let's change the pronouns, and let's, and then that there are elements. There's some people believe there are 4 elements, some people believe there's 7 elements, some people practice with different kinds of elements. And then I think the basis of Wicca is, there's a circle, and there's elements, and there's a sun and a moon, and there's S-bats and Sabbats. and that as above, so below, and that witches have the power to create change. But I would not say that any of us are just alike. I think we have some common beliefs that help us practice together, but sometimes we assume each other have the same common beliefs, and then we find out we're not, and then they fight about it. It's like, no, it's Beltane. No, it's Beltania. And so then, and great friendships are broken over silly arguments like that. So, yeah, it's when the question is either or in magic, the answer is both. So yes, there are some core belief systems. They're very basic.
Okay. What about as far as working with one tradition? Is there a benefit then to working with just one rather than being eclectic?
Well, yeah, because if you're eclectic, then that means that you're kind of doing whatever comes up for you, and you're just kind of following your nose and where the goddess leads you on your path. And that's well and good, but you don't become a master, right? Like, you don't become a master at anything. So it depends on what your goals are. Do you want to be a master, or do you want to be a jack of all trades? Like, jack of all trades. I can fix the hair dryer if I can take it apart and see what's wrong with it and put it back together. But if I've got to get another part or something like that, I can't do it. Like, I got to figure out what part's not working and stick in a new part, and that's not going to happen. So what do you want to do? Do you want to be the master that can fix it no matter what's wrong with it, or do you just want to be able to use it and pull the lint out of it when it's stopped up? That's the thing. It's about what your desire is. Do you just want to enjoy spiritual experiences that are provided for you, and follow the path for your own personal knowledge? Or do you want to also facilitate experiences where other people have those experiences? Like, do you want to be a facilitator? Do you want to provide the experience, or do you want to consume the experience, because I think that that's really the difference between an eclectic witch that is, you know, not following a particular discipline. Not saying that you wouldn't master something. Like, I'm a really great cook. I've never been to school to cook, but man, if I cook for you, you will be happy, right? That's not the same as being a chef. That's not the same as going to cordon bleu. I don't understand what happens to sugar at 400 degrees. Nobody's told me. Like, I could go look it up if I really wanted to know, if the occasion came up, but a cordon bleu chef would just know. And they could use that information to create a dish that I couldn't even conceive, right? So that is the difference, I believe, in the two.
Okay.
And there's not a right or wrong. There's just a, what do you want out of your craft?
Right. So it just depends on what your goals are, essentially. Then what is the most, I don't know, amazing experience that just, sets out from any other thing? What's yours?
Okay. So, well, I've talked to Jesus 3 times, and you would think that that would be the most exciting thing. And it was for a while. Yeah. Jesus told me I had to be Mormon, that it was okay. I could be I needed permission. I was very devout. But the biggest thing that happened to me was when I was holding Demeter at Spring Mystery Festival. Like, I had worked with the Great Mother my whole life. I've invoked Demeter before. I have been her in rituals. I have, like, I didn't, when you're a vessel for the gods at Spring Mysteries and you're working with the Goddesses Festival, it is completely different from any level of witchcraft that I've ever experienced before. And I had been in the mysteries, and I had experienced being a vessel. And yes, it is really powerful. But when I was Demeter's vessel, she was really worried about what was going to happen to the planet. And after the honeymoon phase of me being just super giddy about being Demeter's vessel and giving out presents to everybody and being the Great Mother that provides, because you really feel the Great Mother that provides. I got a grant from Bed Bath & Beyond, and I gave pillows and bedding out to everybody. I had a program called Pillows for Everyone, and I gave bedding. So it was great. But she was really worried that something was going to happen. And as I started working with her, she wanted me to go around the planet, the United States, probably planet, but I didn't have money for the planet, and tell people that there was a calamity that was coming and that we needed to prepare because our food supply was threatened. She's very upset about the food supply and the fact that our food is making us sick. She calls it plastic food. She says we're eating plastic food, and that's why we're all dying of cancer and the things. So I went around to all of these places, and I invoked Demeter, and I took her shrine, and I gave her message out to people, which was in a short: eat locally, plant gardens, eat heirloom foods, don't eat plastic, GMO foods, and protect our food supply. Something seriously bad is coming. Protect your food supply, have food. And she said we had like a year and a half, and I was like, God, man, am I crazy? Maybe this will be the destruction of my career. Oh, that crazy Bella, she's all gloom and doom, right? And then I went all over the place, and I'm coming home, and she says, you did really good. I'm proud of you. You should open a foundation for me called Save the Seeds Foundation. So I did that. And then a year and a half, the pandemic came, and we were all like, we were not expecting a pandemic, but we were all prepared. Like, we were ready. We knew that something was coming. And so it wasn't oh my God, what's going, she told me, and she had me prepared, and she prepared our people. And she said, y'all have to live through this because I'm going to need you on the other side. We have very important work to do on the other side to save the planet. She didn't use those words, but, and so then every once in a while I go, she just wants us to live through this. She just needs me to live through this, because, you know, sometimes it gets stressful, but that experience is something that I haven't been able to talk myself out of. You know, like I said earlier, like you'll have this really amazing experience and then you'll go, did that really happen? Did I dream that? Did I make that up? Have I changed the story over time? You know, you'll change the story over time to make it less significant, not more significant. That's what people do. But that experience with her was really powerful because she said, she was like, who do you think you've been praying to all these years? And I was like, the Great Mother. And she was like,
Hello.
right. You know, because I pray to the Great Mother. I have since I found out there was a goddess. That's who I prayed to, was the Great Mother. And she's like, I am literally like, that's my title. What is so hard for you to figure out? Because,
Okay.
you know,
What about festivals? Let's talk about that a little bit. What are the best festivals do you think that someone who is just learning can go to?
well, I'm going to say that I think the ATC best festivals anywhere. We have there are some iconic festivals in paganism, and then there are some I just want to learn in paganism. And so the local people are just getting together and they're having drum circles and workshops and rituals and stuff like that, where they're just a bunch of pagans getting together. Like Pagan Unity Festival is really good. Phoenix Fire, and there's a lot of really good like festivals that are local, that are not expensive, and they're just camping events, and they're fun to go to. And then there are iconic festivals, bucket list festivals like Rites of Spring, or Pagan Spirit Gathering, which is Circle Sanctuary, or Spring Mysteries Festival, Hecate Sickle Festival. Those are the two that the ATC does. The Pagan Spirit Gathering has been around for, I don't know, 40 years, 35 years, something like that. It's a long time. And Selena Fox is the first witch I ever saw. She was on Oprah Winfrey, and she brought out this blow up globe, and she was Selena Fox, but like 27. It was awesome. And so, but at Spring Mysteries Festival, we do the modern Eleusinian rites. So the rites of Eleusis have been around since like 3000 AD, something like that. It's the oldest running spiritual pilgrimage ever. Like Mecca got nothing on the mysteries. Like the goddesses' mysteries predate Eleusis into Egypt and Sumeria and stuff like that. So we do those rites today, and I didn't start it. I was appointed into this position. I used to do the rites on the East Coast, but in the different Sabbaths, like when it's Ostar, Persephone comes back from the underworld, and when it's Maven, Persephone goes back into the underworld, right? But we do the Eleusinian mysteries, which is the whole of it, all of Demeter's mysteries, in 4 days from Thursday to Sunday. It's really powerful. It's springmysteries.com. That is the festival that changed my life. Like I went there and I saw a goddess, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that this is happening on the earth. Deity is actually walking around in people's bodies. Like that is a god right there in the flesh. Is really cool. And so it changed my world. And now I'm the Archpriestess. I moved to Washington, sold my house, did the whole thing. Like that. It is the most powerful festival that I've ever been to. And I say that coming from, I was a new person that came, and I saw, and I cried like all day. They couldn't stop me from crying. It was really powerful. And Pagan Spirit Gathering is more like everybody just comes together. It's a big stone soup of paganism, right? It's Selena Fox is the stone, and everybody throws in their stuff, and you get this delicious, wonderful, magical event that's really powerful. Once you get past the rain on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Almost always rains on Tuesday at the Pagan Spirit Gathering because all these pagans come together, and then it goes boom on Tuesday, and then the energy kind of synergizes, and then it's more of the soup has married by Wednesday. It's really great. I love Pagan Spirit Gathering. And the Hecate Sickle Festival, we do something different with Hecate Sickle Festival every year. Hecate is the All Mother, and so she brings us different mysteries, and we explore different pantheons. Where Spring Mysteries is the modern rites of Eleusis. It's the restored rites of Eleusis, and we've been doing them for 37 years. They happen at Easter every year from Thursday to Sunday. Sometimes they start a little early. They kind of pre-season things that start like Tuesday and Wednesday. And it is you can go to springmysteries.com to register. It's held in a hotel right by the Seattle airport. So it's really only as far away from you as your airport. People fly in to go to Spring Mysteries. It's that kind of a festival. And it is, if you ever wanted to go to like one of those big ancient pagan festivals that you read about in the books, right? That was Eleusis. It was the whole city was the goddess's city. When you read about things from Eleusis, they talk about how the goddess told them to build it this way. And people read that and they're like, what do they mean the goddess told them? Well, I will tell you that when you work with the gods of Eleusis, like we do at Spring Mysteries, she tells you, like she tells us exactly how she wants things to be. Voices in the room, right? Like it's really, you have to experience it to understand it. And if you had a chance to do that, go to one of those festivals. Like you'd need a time machine, or like if you were to go to Eleusis, it's in Greece, right? You don't have to do any of that stuff. You don't even have to get a passport. It's in Washington State. When I found that out, I was like, oh my God, so there, and it has never let me down. Eleusis is the most powerful experience that I've ever had at a pagan event. And I really recommend that everybody go at least twice because it's an initiatory experience. You get initiated.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're about out of time, but I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And is there any advice that you want to leave us with?
Well, just if you want some more Bella in your life, atcwicca.org. That's where you find the church. Springmysteries.com is my festival. I would really love it if you came out. Well, Demeter would love it if you came and saw her. I hear about it all the time. So I would love it if you came and saw your mother because she will be happy. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. Wiccan Seminary.EDU. And thank you so much for having me, Atalanta. It's such a pleasure to get to talk to you and spend some time with you. Bone woman stuff. You're such an asset to our community. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being on here, and have a beautiful evening. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Bye-bye.
That concludes another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Thank you for tuning in, and a very special thank you goes to Belladonna Laveau for being our guest tonight. Blessed be.